At Boston with the athlete section. Today we have a special guest who runs cross country for Troy University, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Patterson Graham. I'm a freshman at Troy University, and I'm super excited to be on today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm really excited that we're doing this. Like Patterson mentioned, he's a freshman at Troy University. He graduated from Macomb County High School, and he was a two-time for a GHSA cross country champion, along with a variety of other athletic accomplishments that we'll get into as well. So, really excited for this. I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but we were kind of working. By the time this comes out, it'll be like the end of January, but right now recording this before the new year, and so we had to kind of work like with our schedules around like the holidays. So that was pretty fun and challenging, but I'm glad we're able to sit here now and talk. So yay.
Absolutely. And am I the first distance runner you've been able to have on?
Yes, you are.
All right, good. I'll try to give us a good name here.
I'm sure you do fine. I'm really excited. Me and Chloe, which is his sister, we're gonna get into that as well. We're in the same Delight Ministries organization back at UGA. And I remember when before you were committed and before my brother was committed, we were talking about our brothers. We had like a delight day and we were just like, yeah, our brothers are like, into running, and that's something that we never did. And they're trying to like find what schools they want to go to. And so we had that in common. And then when she found out that I had a podcast, she was like, "Oh, let me know if you want to interview my brother." I was like, "Yeah, like give me his information. I'll reach out to him immediately." And here we are. So shout out to Chloe because Chloe's
Absolutely.
good looking. I definitely would have done the same thing for my brother. So nice older sister.
Absolutely, yeah.
Chloe is really great. So before we get into um our or get into your beginnings of cross country and like how it
hmm
started, can you tell me a little bit about y'all's sibling relationship and your upbringing and just how like sports became a part of you? Just tell me a little bit about.
Absolutely. So we're decently close in age. She's 2 years older. But I think there is something to be said about an older sibling that's a sister rather than a brother in
Mm,
context of sports. Because I think in a way sometimes that affected sort of how I am as a leader now.
mm,
Um, Sort of thinking all the way back to then, it's like she was never really the type who was as tough love on me necessarily. Like she was very supportive of me and my endeavors very early on, and I kind of learned to be responsive to that, to sort of, people building me up and sort of knowing what it means to build someone up, what that can do for their confidence. So as I rose up in sports, so I kind of remembered that uh, that's what it can do to be raised up. And so as I sort of rose into a leadership position of my own, I kind of wanted to do that for some of my teammates as well. And so I think that's a big impact that I've had with an older sister. Absolutely.
that's very nice. Very sweet to say. And I'm just going to be super proud that you said that because I can see that she definitely has a lot of great leadership
Okay.
abilities. Even in our
Mhm.
organization, she was able to step up and get a lot of things done or make her voice known when things were just like going a certain way and she wanted it to kind of like,
Mhm.
I guess, see it a different way. So it's definitely nice to have that leadership capability. Especially as an older sister, it can be very challenging because you feel like, I don't know, I'm the older sister of all of my siblings, and sometimes I wonder how they look at me. Like I was somewhat, I could be a little tough love-ish, but then I also was very like happy and supportive. More so
Mhm.
now that I'm older, and now they're
Right.
looking like, no, but that's not what you said when we were younger. Um,
Yeah.
but I love that because, like you said, in leadership, it is definitely important to like, yeah, like people have to respect you and follow your leadership style, but having that supportive and just like ongoing role of showing that person that you have their support, you have their back is very important because it's not just about telling them what they need
hmm
to do, but also about building them up along the way. So
And distance running is very unique in that way because when you get out on the trail, maybe it's not a race, maybe it's just day to day,
right.
but you're out there and you've got 10 miles ahead of you and it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Whew.
And so you're just there with your thoughts. It's just you for an hour of running.
Wow.
So what are you going to do with that? Because you can easily be negative and really not want to get up or do anything.
Hmm.
But when you can have just a little bit of positivity every day, that makes such a difference because you feel like what you're doing day to day is helping. It's helping you win.
Yeah.
And you see that, and you can see it on your teammates too when you build each other up and you're like, we really have a team here that I think before time passes, too much time passes, we can start winning. And so when you're able to build each other up like that, it's almost like you're not alone anymore doing these things. Like obviously over the holidays, we have all these teammates like all across the country, and we're still having to do the same level of training. It's colder outside. No one really wants to do it,
Right.
but it's being able to like go back in the group chat and people are just like, I wanted to tell so and so they had a great run today.
Hmm.
Like things like that where it's just like that ability to build each other up in distance running makes it a lot less isolating because it's a really easy sport to where you can just end up alone, but ultimately cross country, you have a team score. It's how your whole team does.
Right.
And so if your five isn't feeling very good, then it really doesn't matter what someone does as the one. You all need to come in there as a clump and be a powerful group. And that starts with everyone feeling like you have a chance. And so I think that that's been helpful as well.
Wow. That's a very impactful point, very strong point as you mentioned there. And like you said, just that little bit of positivity, especially when you're alone on the trail, is can make a big impact. And that's kind of how it is in life, where you could be having a bad day, or you can see someone else not having the best day. Just one compliment or one, just hey, hope you're doing well today, or hey, I like your shoes. Something like that can just really like make somebody's day, and you never really know, what
Absolutely.
impacted them. So like you said, wow, I definitely want to get into the training and all that goes into cross country because it is very interesting that you could be alone and what you said, like you said, with your own thoughts, and it's like, wow, like running that long early in the morning. I'm trying to see how
Hmm.
I would be able to do that without like getting in my head or being like, where are they? Oh my gosh, how much time do I have left?
Hmm.
I have another brother who's older than London who goes to UGA,
Hmm.
and he ran cross country for a little bit. And our family was used to track and field, so seeing
Hmm.
the contrast of how it was like I said, early in the morning and longer, but then you finish the day earlier was a big
Hmm.
compare and contrast, a big difference that we weren't used to at that time. So tell me a little bit about how cross country found you or how you found cross country and started just being in it throughout your life.
Yeah, so cross country wasn't really a huge thing in my family. That wasn't really a sport that anyone had gotten into before me, except for an aunt that I had who married into the family.
Mm,
She was sort of very into running, sort of that like marathon type stuff or whatever. And I guess I was maybe in sixth or seventh grade. We were all together playing like a game of mini golf or something. And like I'd go first and I'd get it like kind of close to the hole and I'd be like, well, you got to let me tap it in. And so I'd go to do it and I missed the hole and I'd be like, but I'm so close now. And then I'd get it in on the third one. And I did that like every single hole. I'd finish the whole round before I let anyone else go. And then by the end of it, I don't know if she was tired of it or what it was, but she went up to me and she was like, Patterson, you just don't have any patience.
mm,
And I was like, I guess you're right. And she was like, and that's why I run. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, it's always my turn. I've never waited for someone to give me a pass when I'm running.
wow.
And I was sort of like, that's interesting, but I didn't really know too much about the sport of running because our family was so not into it that I didn't even know that was really much of a possibility to do past high school.
Right.
Like I thought that was kind of something people continue to do as just like a hobby and people like running or whatever, but I was kind of under the impression Olympians were just like the best people out of high school,
Yeah, that's what we
which is of
thought
course
too. Yeah,
which is of course like very rare. That's not really how it goes,
right.
but I just hadn't thought about it much because it just wasn't very in my life. And then that eighth grade year, I did end up just wanting to do it because, like, I guess those words had kind of stuck with me a little bit. Um, and sort of on that team, I was able to sort of find a little bit of my like place socially as like a leader.
Mm,
Because I had kind of been looking for that in my life where I was like, I kind of like, I like being involved in things, but I want to actually have a leadership role. And so I was like trying like clubs or whatever, but people have been in them since they were in like sixth grade and now they have the position. So it's like joining it as an eighth grader. It's like you're just kind of another dude in the club.
Mm.
And so I was kind of happy that I could join something and like people right away were kind of receptive to like what I was saying or whatever. And that was like the first place where it was like, because I did start it just as like the mindset of like, this is basically a club where I was just like, I'm just going to have fun here.
Mm.
Um, and like a lot of other people there, it's like their parents told them they needed to do a sport or something. Like a bunch of people kind of were dreading that they were having to run cross country that season. And so it was like when I was graduating or whatever, people were coming back up to me and they were like, I want to thank you for joining that eighth grade cross country team because you provided that bit of joy in the day that I didn't think I was going to have. And it was kind of like leaving that year. I wasn't this crazy good runner, but I had realized that, like, okay, there's a place for me here at least. So if I keep working on it, then I can end up, just really enjoying the world at least of running.
Wow. That's a very interesting perspective, especially how you mentioned that patience was something that you didn't have, but then cross country. So your aunt told you that cross country was something that
Hmm.
with that because I feel like that's a virtue that is not always easy to come across.
Hmm.
It's interesting that sports can play a part in that to kind of help aid that in a way. Um,
Absolutely.
and then you mentioned leadership a few times, so I obviously see how important that aspect is for you in your life. What do you think stands out? What are three things that you think stand out for a really great leader that you like to follow and that you feel like that you emulate within those concepts?
Right. So it's not something that I try to like make known often because it's something that you want to be kind of like implicitly understood, but
Mhm.
definitely someone who can command a circle when you're in the center of it. So like before races in cross country, what we'll do is we'll do these things called strides, where we're out on the field and we're just like getting used to getting the wheels turning, getting used to race pace. And then after the last one, we'll be out in the middle of the field and we'll all do a prayer. And then after that, someone has to get in the middle and give a little pep talk about what we're about to do.
Mm.
And so my junior year was that first year we really had a chance to win cross country state. We were in a really good place. Something unfortunate happened to me individually the year before, and we just kind of rallied behind that. And so I got in the middle of that, and usually, like I'm from Oconee County, so we were always like, okay, OC on three, and then we'd all break it down. And at one time we were like, but we came here with a goal. We're not
Oh,
just Oconee County, we're here to win. And so we did win on three. And sort of when I said that, I changed a tradition that we have been doing since the 80s. Since the team started, we've been doing OC on three.
mhm.
And so, but sort of going in there and being like, this meet we're doing win. And now that's a tradition.
Yeah.
Is whenever we go to state, no matter what the rankings say, they go win on three, 1, 2, 3, win
Wow.
every single time. So I think that's number one is get in the middle of that and make sure everyone's listening to what you're saying. And you're able to, people can listen to you. I think number two is you want to be able to relate to and get on the same level as the people that you're trying to lead. Because if they feel like you're on different points in your life, different points in the team, they're not really going to want to listen to you.
Mhm.
When sometimes those are the people you need to reach the most. Like I remember being a freshman, looking so highly at the seniors and being like, I can never be like that. But the freshmen are the people you want to talk to the most because you're going to be gone in a couple months,
Right.
and they got years to be there. And so being, you know, like an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, and kind of like swallowing your pride a little bit, going to their level, having a one-on-one conversation with that freshman, trying to keep running fun for them,
Mm.
letting them understand the opportunity that they have with running. Because so many people start it with so much natural talent, but they don't understand, they don't see it because they don't know how running works. And I was there at a time, and there were seniors who reached out to me, and I didn't know why they were doing it. It's because they're good leaders.
Right.
It's because they understood like I'm going to be gone, but this guy is going to help be the future of this team.
Mm.
And so I think that's important. Get on their level. Make sure you're saying things that resonate to them. Talk to them individually. Um, and then I guess number three is just again like being like building people up, being very specific with the things that you choose to compliment. or be very specific with the things you choose to critique. You got to know the person you're talking to. Because I had some teammates that preferred it when I was really hard on them,
Hmm.
and that helped them run much better. Um, because they would run below their potential because they'd just be like, I'm great, you know?
Yeah.
And then like finish the race and be like, I had so much left. And I'm like, I reckon you did. I think you could have done much better than that. You just didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and then there were other guys who were kind of lacking on their confidence. And I'm like, but do you see where you were last year?
Hmm.
Last year at this meet, you may have been 40 seconds behind what you just did.
Right.
And we're worrying about this guy who outkicked you in the last 10 seconds of the race. He doesn't matter. You made up 40
Right.
places
That's progress.
by just doing what you needed to do every day. And so sometimes that's important is you got to know the difference of who you're talking to. So those are the big three things of how you can really get people to receive your leadership, I think.
Wow. You touched on a lot of great key points and aspects there. Um, I like how you mentioned specifically just as you're older, looking at the next generation after you and just
Hmm.
realizing that, hey, I need to connect with them. Like, swallow my pride. Don't think I'm too good. Like, we may be on two different levels right now, but this person might surpass me, and I want them to
Exactly.
surpass me. I want them
Exactly.
to accomplish such great things, to carry this name far. So let me tap into them and just kind of like give them the wisdom and my insight, um, to see what they can accomplish. And I think just having that in mind is very special because this world is going to keep turning and the next generation is
Hmm.
going to keep being produced. So even in life, it's just important to know that the people after you are the future. So you have to just pour into them in order for them to grow, and they can do the same for people under them.
Hmm.
Also, learning styles you mentioned, I feel like, yeah, everybody learns differently. Everybody takes criticism and correction differently. So just as a leader, knowing who you're dealing with, knowing how are they receptive to certain things is very essential in order for them to listen to you, because some people might not take the yelling and the, hey, let
Hmm.
me tell you this, like, just tell you straight up. But some people might, and some people might like the, wait, let me tell you about this accomplishment you just did. Like, this is big. Like, it's
Right.
very interesting. Um, I guess knowing that everybody learns differently, and so you have to kind of alter or make adjustments in how you, like, give them
Right.
advice or give them correction. So, wow.
And it's just like I said, regardless of what they say, when you said that to them, there's going to be a point where they're alone on the trail again
Mm,
and they're going to be thinking about something.
yeah.
So, what do you want them to be thinking about? Do you
Right.
want them to be thinking about you grabbing their ear and telling them how bad they are?
Right.
Or do you want them to remember that you told them they had more in that last lap and they didn't use it and they should have?
Right.
That's what you want them to remember because then they'll do it.
Exactly.
And they'll run those great times and they'll get those great places. And that's what makes your team good. I mean, we were 1,000-person school that broke the state record for points at a state meet.
Wow.
It can be done.
Definitely.
I mean, we're a small public school, and we were able to do it just because we had the right attitude and we were doing it every day. And I'd like to think a little bit of my leadership was helping with that. And I was proud of them this year. They were able to keep the dynasty going, and they won our third in a row in cross country this year. So
Wow.
I'm very proud of them.
That's a very proud moment. Do you go visit often to your school?
So being so far away, I just kind of can't
Yeah,
because I have practice all the time too.
that's fair.
That's just the nature of it. And then it's 4.5 hours between Athens and Troy.
That's true.
So what I try to do is I reach out to the phone, just give them a phone call, give them a text, just letting them know I saw what they did and I thought they did well.
Wow. That goes a long
And
way.
so yeah, it is. But like when we're having conference, they're having state, so we can't
Yeah.
like I can't make that trip very often. But I can still hop on the phone with them afterwards and give them all a call and just talk to them about their race and how they were feeling and sort of still try to help them in that way. But I also kind of want to accept what is, because I have this new opportunity at Troy to build something cool.
Right.
And so I kind of want to get fully enthralled in that and not hold on too much to what I did in high school
Yeah.
because I was doing all of that in high school, sometimes with the thoughts of being here.
Mm.
So I don't want to waste my time now that I am here,
Thinking about
wishing I
the
was back
yeah.
there. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's a very interesting statement because and very true. Like there's some things that we've accomplished in the past and we look back on it and it's a great story to tell, but then we're like, but we want to make sure we're living in this present moment because there's a time in the past where we were wishing and praying that we were where we are right now.
Hmm.
So how are you able to one differentiate the two um after making that transition to a collegiate
Hmm.
level? And what were the expectations versus reality um, that you realized competing in a college level?
Okay, so you said the difference first? Is that
Yeah,
right?
the difference, or I
Okay,
guess getting your mindset to kind of differentiate the two, like still enjoying what was, but also being in the moment of college, but then also the
right,
difference between the 2.
right. So what's fun about middle school is usually we run 2 miles in a race,
Mm.
and then we get to high school, we do a 5K, which is a little bit more than three. And then now in college, I get to run a new distance again, where usually what we do is an 8K, which is a little under 5 miles. And then for championship races, we do a 10K, which is six, a little more than six. So in that way, I kind of get to be a freshman again because I was like in the same way that I was a freshman being like, I don't know if my 2 mile can translate to a 5K. I was like, I really don't know if my 5K can be an 8K. And so it was kind of like immediately like you were like, everything you did got you here, but that doesn't mean anything now that you're here. You got to earn it again.
Right.
Um, and so it's kind of realizing that again. And then we have a very young team at Troy. We're very blessed that like as I progress, those guys are going to progress with me, and we're going to be able to have a very strong team really soon. If we just all keep our noses down. But it was sort of like that thing again where a lot of those guys weren't used to winning as a team. And so it was like learning how to speak to those guys again, and those guys learning how to speak to me, and us all learning how we're going to be a team because it's our coach's job to get us there and to train us, and it's our job to learn how to be a team.
Right.
And so that first year when so many of us are so young, our oldest varsity guy was a sophomore. So we were an all sophomore freshman team for our top seven. And so we're all learning how to be teammates. Um, and so that was a very new expectation to have.
Yeah.
Um, and then what was considered going above and beyond in high school is a bare minimum in college too. Because I remember, I guess it was sometime, I don't really remember the context, but it was some sort of like joke I was making. It's like, I don't really want to like long run tomorrow. And then one of the other guys on the team, I guess he was a little upset about it. He was like, Patterson, you don't think every team long runs on Sunday?
Mm.
He was like, everyone you're going to run against at conference doesn't want to do a long run tomorrow, but we're all long running Sunday.
Wow.
And like in that moment, I was just kind of messing around, but I was kind of like, I mean, he's right about that.
Yeah.
Everyone, that's what I tell myself when I don't want to do something. Is I remember him saying, everyone long runs on Sunday,
Mm.
and I think about that. Everyone gets up and they long run early in the morning and they go to church
Right.
and they go about their day like they didn't just run 13, 14, 15, whatever miles um, to start their day.
Right.
And so, like, whereas like in high school, people would be like, wow, you got up on Sunday and you ran 8 miles, and they'd be like, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of. That's what I do.
So, sort of just realizing that like everyone does that.
Yeah.
We were all the guy from where we came from. Get that out of your head, you know? Like that is not something that's impressive anymore. We all had to do that, and now you got to do more because we're running a new distance. We're running 2 miles longer, and you're expected to run the same pace, if not faster.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Mm.
And so, sort of like understanding that pressure is there,
Yeah.
um, and being able to deliver on those bare minimums. I'm
Right.
sorry. What was
Exceed those
the next part? Yeah,
expectations. Yeah.
absolutely.
Like, I mean, you kind of answered it, just kind of the expectation
Okay.
versus reality when it came to
Yeah.
making that transition to college, where you're thinking, okay, it's so good, it's gonna be, I'm gonna be smooth sailing, but not realizing
Hmm.
that there will be higher levels to what you already
Right.
known. But then also, I like how you mentioned kind of taking the isolation out of it, but also realizing that everybody's doing it. So you need to be,
Hmm.
you know, hitting those points and finding out, I guess, ways that you can exceed that as well. So that was a good
Absolutely.
point.
And then I think another thing, sorry,
No, go ahead.
is the coaching is all different. Because my coach, it's his job. Like we got a track coach, strength and conditioning coach, and then my distance coach.
Mm,
And that's what they do. Whereas like all of the people I was working with in high school, that was part of what they did. Like it's like, oh, maybe they're a teacher, but they also really love the sport, and so they wanted to do that. Or like I had one who was she was a nutritionist who worked on her own in Athens, and then she just loved the sport of running and coaching, and so she would come over and coach. But regardless, everyone that was their part-time thing.
right.
This is it for my coach. He loves running. He's there to compete, and it's his job. And so we're running to help him out with his job.
Mm,
And so the level of seriousness that he has is new because it's not just all about enjoying it, we're performing too.
mm,
And so sometimes like when those people in high school like wouldn't try as hard as they could have, she'd be like, "Well, we can do that next meet. We have things to build on. We can understand that, but
yeah,
we sort of go into those races in college already with a pretty aggressive race plan,
right.
an idea what we want to do, and the expectation is we're kind of just going to execute that."
Yeah. Like
And so, yeah, sorry.
kind of like running as if this is your last race. Like don't
Hmm.
think on, okay, I'll just do better next time. But no, you need to like do what you can now. Do your best now and build on that. I like that point.
Yeah, and with courses in cross country all being so different, there's something to learn and there's a reason to attack every race with a different level of severity. So it's like if we got some hills at conference, this course has some hills. Run those hard
Mm,
so that you learn what it feels like to feel bad on a hill so that when we get to conference, you run fast. Or sometimes we'll get to a race where we're like, boys, this is just a fast course. So if you don't run fast here, you just won't have a good PR for the year.
mm,
And so sometimes there's that level of where it's like, where I do want to run the fast time. So there's a reason to push at every cross country race. But the thing about cross country that always has people down is that idea that not every course is the same. So, like my senior year of high school, we ran a lot of hilly courses because Georgia has a very difficult state course.
mm.
And then we ran two fast courses and it rained at both of them. And so we didn't get this profound opportunity to run quickly my senior year. And so a lot of it was proving it in track. And then I ran like a Georgia top 10 mile. I had this big PR in the mile. I PR'd 10 seconds in the mile. Um, and they just sort of kept coming. And then I think I did like, I took off maybe 22 seconds in the 2 mile and then 4 seconds in the 800 as well. And I was able to put in a pretty good split. London would probably disagree, but I ran a 50 and I was pretty proud of that.
That is good. That is still really good.
But yeah, so it's like then once you get to track, it's like it's all about, like because every track's the same. It's all flat. It's all 400 unless it's indoor, I guess. But
Right.
regardless, everyone's running the same distance and it's the same, level of. It's just a track.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that's hard for distance runners to wrap their head around in cross country, especially when they're young.
Hmm.
Is they're like, why did I run slower this week than last week? I thought I was better. Because you can do that in track. You can just get better and the track lets you. And then sometimes in cross country, it just pours rain that day.
Yeah. Wow. I I like how you mentioned about your track experience as well because I was gonna ask you,
Hmm.
how was it being a part of the 4x8 relay team who won that championship? Tell me about that experience.
So that was really fun because we came into that meet heavy favorites.
Mm,
And so a lot of the guys were kind of mentally checked out from it. Like there was another guy I had on my team who was planning on trying to win the state in the 800. And so we were kind of telling him like, oh, if it ends up like an easy race, you might need to jog it or whatever. But there was another team that played it perfectly, where they put their two best guys up front and said, do something about it.
mm,
Because we ran our two slowest at the front. They ran good legs, but we like had it so that we were very backloaded, so that me and this other guy would kind of bring it home. And they both split very good high school 800 splits, and they had, I think it was a, I think it was a 10-second difference when I got the baton, and we were back in second. I wasn't even in the same. I think I was actually third when we got it. We were back there. We were kind of the heavy favorites, and so no one really knew what to do with that. And so I kind of had to run the whole race from behind. And then simultaneously, I'm thinking about my teammate who tomorrow has the 800 finals. And I'm like, if I make him, oh my
Oh
goodness,
wow.
I didn't know you could do that. I don't know if I can replicate that. But anyway,
That is so
for sure,
funny. I've never seen that before. I like
forget that.
wow.
Anyways, so I was saying, I was like, I don't want him to. I'm gonna be careful with the hand movements. But I was like, I don't want to drain his energy. I can never forgive myself for that. If he loses the 8 tomorrow because I made him go so hard in this 4x8 we should have had locked up.
Hmm.
And so I had this very dramatic last lap where I was able to put a pretty convincing lead on the dude who was originally leading me by like 10 seconds.
Mhm.
Um, because he went out a lot harder than he should have because he knew he had a big lead and he was trying to hold it. But the 800's 2 laps, so I ran every bit of that 800.
Yeah.
And I was able to make that up. And so my leg kind of won that for our team. Even though I didn't technically anchor it, I put us in a position to where there was nothing they could do about it now.
Right.
And so our other teammate was just kind of able to just sort of jog it in and get the win.
Right.
But sort of after the race, like that was sort of the thing. And it was my first experience at track state where everyone kind of gets up and is like, is he going to do it?
Yeah.
You know, like you could hear the whole crowd go like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, and
Crowd.
it was,
He's coming in.
yeah, and I could feel like the shivers down my spine where I was like, I am going to get him.
He's coming
I was like, that's so cool that I'm going to be able to do that for my team. And then we got back after we had won that 4x4, and everyone was so proud of that. And then senior year, I had to make a really tough decision with the 4x8 where they could win it without me, but if I ran it, we could just run a really fast time. We already knew going into my senior state I was going to run 4 things. We were just like, what are they going to be? So we were like 2 mile for sure, mile for sure. And then that injured guy I was talking about last time, he unfortunately went down. And so I was now our best 800 guy. And so we were like, you're definitely running those. And so we were like, we really need you to pick between the relays, the 4x8 and the 4x4. And the way that Georgia State track works is we have a thing called sectionals, which is essentially like the top 8 out of the 16 get the opportunity to run at state. And it looked like the 4x8 would be able to jog it through and make it. And so what I told my coach was I was like, tell those guys to run it hard. Because if they run a time that's fast enough to where I feel like they can win state without me, they're going to do it. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go and anchor this 4x4 at sectional. And if this sectional 4x4 makes it through, then they can win state without me. And that was a tough decision to make as a senior because I was denying what I kind of knew was going to be a state title team. Um, but then I had a good friend who ran the Open 400. And he didn't make it through at sectionals, so the 4x4 was his last chance to make it to state. And sectionals happens all in one day. So I went a mile, and then an hour later we ran the 2 mile. 10 minutes later I ran the 800, and then 10 minutes after that was the 4x4. So whole body is just buzzing.
Yeah.
How many laps is that? I guess that's 16 laps I had done already that day, and we were going in for lap 17. My whole body is buzzing, and they like the team comes up to me. I like really can't see very much at all, and they're like, "If you want it, you can anchor this team." And I was like, I was like, I don't know if I can do that, but of course I didn't say that because I remembered like these guys need to see that confidence in me for them to feel like they have a chance. Because right now they were trying to gauge my reaction, see how much of a chance we had. So I looked at them and I was like, let's do it. Because like I knew I wanted them to see that it looked like I had something left in the tank, even though I felt like I didn't.
Yeah.
like I needed them to see that I thought I believed I could bring us to state.
Right.
Um, and those first few legs, we end up not really in a position where it looks like that's going to be a possibility. And so then it ended up having to be, I had to really fight in that last leg, and I really didn't want to do that. Um, but I ended up just doing enough
Yeah.
to get us through to state, and then afterwards just completely collapsed. Um,
Like that was all in
it was
y'all.
it was scary. I mean, I couldn't get my eyes open. I couldn't really breathe well. It was, I mean, I was out of it. I had done my 17th lap. And I guess again, London won't think it's very impressive, but it was a 51 after all that.
I mean,
So it
I
was like,
think that is pretty impressive for you to be having a whole day full of 10-minute increments and just race after race. That's a lot. I think you even like attested that's like like a tolling on your body. That's very taxing on your body to be going through
mhm,
that all day, like with barely any rest and just having that's a lot. And to get a
yeah.
51 split of that, that's really great.
And then at state, we kind of had to do it again.
Oh,
This time because we were tied for fourth, and top three get a trophy. And so they were like, we need 2 points to get that trophy. And our 4x4 team wasn't very good. And so once again, we kind of had to have like again, it was right after the 800. And so it was like, once again, we kind of had to go out there. And that was the 50 that I was very proud of. And our 4x4 team PR by like 6 seconds or something ridiculous. And we ended up getting just those 2 points to get third.
hey, hey, I think that's a really big accomplishment though. That was a lot that you had to go through in order
Yeah.
to pull off that win and just really like take your team to victory. So I know they're very proud of you, and I'm glad that you're also very proud of yourself and your team because that it takes a lot to go far in that way. So wow.
Yeah, and there's four guys, so we all had to give it everything we had.
Yeah.
So, I mean, none of those other teams care that I ran all those other races. They might actually be glad for it,
Hmm.
because it's like, that's another chance. So, like, if they're gonna give their all to that 4x4, why wouldn't I?
Right.
Like, there's another guy at that state meet where the 4x4 is all he has, and so this is his chance. And so, who am I to go into that race and be like, but it's just 4x4?
Right. Like I already ran so
Like,
many races. I mean,
but I'm a miler for real. Like I don't really need to try too hard in this 4x4. Like that's
yeah.
easy to do that. A lot of distance runners do that.
Yeah.
Um, but just sort of to have just that little bit more heart
Yeah.
to be like, let's actually go after this. Let's see what we can do.
Right.
Let's end what was my high school career, because 4x4 was the last race we had, on a high note,
Yeah.
and just do it. And we didn't even have an alternate for that 4x4 team. They knew I was going to run it because I ran that section, so it's like there's nothing that's going to
But
pull
yeah,
them
I
out
mean
of
he's
it
gonna
now.
do it. Of course.
Yeah. So I was super happy to be part of that team,
Yeah.
and I think the 4x4 has taught me a lot. Where it's being in a world where no one expects you to be very good, because I got very comfortable in my distance running world where everybody knew who Patterson Graham was, and no one really wanted to race him in the last lap. Where I had sort of developed this reputation to where it's like he finishes race very quickly. My 2 mile PR I closed in a 62. So like I had raised that reputation among the long distance guys where it's like this guy's got speed. But then you run the 4x4 and it's like the football players, it's the people who specialize in those short distances.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I'd go to meets and people would be like laughing at the fact that I was our anchor. Like there would be other teams that would be excited for the fact that they got to race me for the win.
Right.
Or like coaches are like, this kid's easy, you know? And I loved that because it gave me a little bit more of a reason as I got better at the sport to keep a chip on my shoulder
Mm.
and to keep telling myself that I am tough.
Yeah.
Because I didn't let that stuff get to me,
Yeah.
and I still raced the hardest I could. Um, and so I think that it taught me a lot with that. It's just, to have thicker skin than that, and not to let those things get to your head, because they can say whatever they want until you get on the track, and
Right.
ultimately that's what ends up mattering.
Right. Shut him up
It doesn't.
with their race.
It doesn't really matter what you say before the race if you end up losing.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So I think that was great for me. And then it was also as a distance runner, like that's how I was able to prove to myself I had a good kick. Like that's how I started believing in it.
Mm,
Was I was like, like I'm used to finishing a distance event and then hopping right off the track and doing a 4x4.
hmm.
Like I'm used to doing that. Just do that in the middle of a race. Just now go with all you have in the middle of this distance race,
Yeah.
and then it'll be fine. So like it was good for me just believing that I had that toughness at the end of a race to just finish hard.
Yeah.
And now that is what like people who race me are most scared of is the fact that I run really hard in the last mile.
Right.
Um, I had people I'd run against that would plan around that,
Mm,
where it's like, but we know what he's going to do in the last 800 or so, so you got to get way ahead of him because he's catching up to you. It's just when is he going
right.
to do it? Like just hope that you're far enough ahead to where it doesn't matter that I kicked harder than you.
Right. He
Like I
kicks
would,
it in.
I would have people thinking about that, and now I don't know. That's just a level of power that I'm glad I was able to earn in distance running.
Yeah. I like how you also mentioned that people had this expectation of you because you're a distance runner, not realizing the potential that you had in
Hmm.
a shorter distance. So you kind of like gave yourself that use that as momentum, had a chip on your shoulder, and
Hmm.
was able to use that as fuel to like drive you further, and kick it into gear when it was time. So it made people kind of be like, oh, never mind.
Right.
Like you said, possess a level of power that you're able to possess because you didn't give up or because you didn't let the naysayers get in your head. And that's not
Right.
something that's easy to come about. I mean, it's easy to have that like mentally stuck in your head going through a race like, dang, they don't believe in me. Like that's tough. But just and using that just to like push yourself further and teach them, this is who I am. It's definitely a very great skill to have to build that power.
Yeah.
So
And it's all about being confident, not cocky.
yeah,
All about earning where you are and feeling like you earned it. So whatever you do from this point on is backed up.
right.
Like being younger, I wouldn't understand that, and I'd just be like, oh, like, and just try to like insert myself into situations because it was just like I thought that's what confidence meant.
Yeah.
But true confidence is just going into a race and honestly feeling like you're just going to be the one who's going to win it.
Mm,
Like you step on the line, whatever line it is, and just feeling like, hey, I got a chance to win this race.
right.
Uh,
Expecting to win it.
exactly. So like even against those guys where it looked like I probably wouldn't have had a chance just looking at us. It's like,
Mm,
but I had that level of confidence. It wasn't cocky. It wasn't
right.
like I was talking crazy to them before the race or like after the race. I was like, I told you I was going to beat you. It was
Right.
just, I knew in my head I was going to, and that's all I
Mm,
needed.
yeah.
And that was an important bit of growth for me as a runner is learning how to do that. Just keep it in here and then put it on the track.
Mm, I like that.
Mhm.
We are a little over time,
Okay.
but that's okay because that means that we are having a great conversation. And you're giving us so much of your wisdom and knowledge and your story that I'm really having a great time listening. And it's okay because I usually go over a lot of people anyway.
Okay.
I do have three more questions that I want to ask. The last one will be just your overall advice,
I'll do them fast.
but no, you as much as you want, you can say. I do not mind. Um, but I do want to talk about. I know you mentioned earlier that something unfortunate happened to you during high school.
Hmm.
If you want to touch on that, you don't have to go into super detail if you don't want to. But I do want to kind of know about what happened and how that shaped you as a person and kind of taught you for years forward. And then I'll get to the next question after you're done with that one.
Absolutely. So sophomore year was like this long chain of frustration, like one thing after another. But it sort of started at sophomore state, where it was like we were racing like a big private school in Atlanta that had like 40,000 tuition. So like these guys are on scholarship. And so we're like, well, we can't win, but we can for sure get second. And we had secured that, and we had felt good about it. But toward the end of the state cross country course is a little bit of a turn into the finish in like the last 10 steps rather than it just being straight. And I was racing with a guy to the line because that's what you're supposed to do. Because I knew I was scoring for my team. I was our three that day. And so, and five score.
So it was my sophomore year. I was our number 3, and I knew it. So I was like, I gotta run to the line because I don't know if this guy is a guy I need to beat or whatever. He doesn't see the turn because we're beside each other. So he kind
Right.
of stumbles to get towards where he needed to be. And the ref saw that and thought I had tripped him. But there was never any contact. There's very clear film to where we never touched. But
Mhm.
because of what had happened that day, I got disqualified and our team got moved down to 4th. And so we were very disappointed. That was a very senior heavy team. I think we had 4 or 3 seniors on that team. Crushed. I mean, because they wanted that race very badly. And they felt
Yeah.
like they had earned it and it got taken from us.
Right.
And then we appealed, and they said the only reason we'd look at film is to determine like who came first, who came second, not to review a DQ. Even though we did have film of the facts that I had not. So that was kind of the
Right.
first thing that happened. So at that point, I'm like, okay, contacting running is illegal. You can't do it. I get to the region finals. I almost win. I'm in the last 100. I get pushed off the track fully onto the infield, have to come back on, and I come third. So I appeal with the officials. They go, hey, man, I didn't see it. I get to sectional. Same thing happens. I get pushed onto the infield, and the last 100 comes second this time. I asked the official, he's like, I didn't see it. How did you not see it? It was in the last
What's
100.
going on?
And so
Yeah.
at that point, I'm like, so a race where I didn't actually touch a guy, I lost everything. But in a race where something directly dirty can happen to me, that guy can win. And so that whole sophomore year, in terms of distance running, was extremely infuriating, especially because I had one region as a freshman. So then to come back and get third as a sophomore, people are like, what's going on with Patterson? And so I felt like I was kind of losing who I was, and I felt like it wasn't really my fault. And so
Right.
that's the thing that was going on sophomore year, like Spark Notes version, is I felt like a lot of the stuff happening just wasn't fair.
Right. What do you think that taught you? I mean, obviously, you were able to persevere from that, and here you are now running cross country. But what do you think that taught you and kind of stuck with you as you were able to continue your high school career on to college?
Right. So first of all, don't wait until the last 100 meters anymore. If you want to win a race, just go out and win it. Don't be scared to just create separation on a guy that you're better than.
Right.
Because I'd be like, well, I could go right now, but what if I risk like blowing it and then he like outkicks me and I lose? Just go.
Mm.
Like, stop worrying. I was just kind of trying to secure the win because I'm like, well, I have the best 100 in the field. So if I
Right.
just make it jog for 7 3/4 laps and then I go in the last one, I'll win for sure. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, you're better than him. Just run fast. Do it.
Exactly.
And so that was the first thing. Have that confidence to bury someone early in a race. And
Mhm.
then secondly, gave me a little bit of a reason to have a chip on my shoulder. And rather than just feel that and only just anger, use that as a reason why the team can now come together. Because it's like you see these things that have happened to us, and they're disappointing. Because this is a team sport. It's not just me that got affected. It's those
Right.
seniors too that had earned every bit of that second place, and it got taken from them. And so now there was a team underneath them that had looked up to those guys and now saw how crushed they were after state. And we were able to be like, we never want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
And so since then, we haven't lost state in cross country.
Nice.
We just don't do
Use that as fuel.
it. Exactly. So just find a reason to bring the team together rather than just be angry about it. Okay, moving past that. Sorry.
No, no, don't apologize. Like that's a good lesson for sure. Like different things that happen in our lives that we maybe like, that's not fair. Like why did that happen? I was doing everything right. Like what happened to me? It's sometimes or most times usually a lesson that we need to take for like other stages of life. So just being able to like look at those, reflect, and learn from those opportunities or learn from those circumstances
Hmm.
is a great way to use that as a lesson for other people who might be going through similar situations. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you was able to tell us about that. I remember you mentioned, I was like, let me make sure I bring that question back up. Also, aside from running, I saw that you played trumpet for 7 years. Tell me how that experience was, and do you still play trumpet from time to time?
Yeah. So I loved being in trumpet, and in freshman year and part of sophomore year, I was actually still in the marching band. So I would run a meet, come back, go to the high school game, or I do the high
Wow.
school game Friday night, come back Saturday morning and do a race. And so
Oh,
for a little while, I was loving doing that. I really do. I enjoy being in band. There's a lot of individuals in there, kind of like running, where everyone's
mhm,
kind of there for a different reason, but you can kind of get together as a group and create something cool. Um,
right,
and I love actually playing my instrument. I love the trumpet, and I got decent at it by the time I was leaving high school, but I was pretty much just doing it in the class and the concerts. By the time I was a
mhm,
senior, I wasn't marching anymore. And there was a few things for that. So first of all, I had an injury in my leg. It was like a stress fracture that was from heel striking, and I was like, I don't heel strike in my run. It's because of how you march. So I was putting
oh,
too much stress on my legs running and then doing marching band, running and then doing marching band. So I kind of got to a point where we got to choose one. And I really wanted to keep running because I was like, I still have this opportunity to do band in class. I can keep it in my life. Running's harder to keep in your life when you're not on the team. And I was really starting to get things going in running too.
right,
Because that sophomore year, I went from 10th on the team to I was now third. And so
wow,
that was a big deal for me. And I was like, I kind of want to keep that ball rolling now. Um,
yeah,
but the other thing about marching band that really upset me is probably our best marching band group we had was my freshman year. But like our seniors were fantastic. They were very, very good. But we were a huge freshman class. And so when we marched, people saw the freshman mistakes. They didn't see how beautiful and great these older people were at their instrument. And so we'd go to competitions we should have won and we'd lose. And our seniors would be so sad. And I'm like, that's our fault that these people who are so good, they don't get to be recognized because because of our mistakes as a freshman. You know,
yeah,
like I just learned how to do this a couple months ago, and now this person where this has been their whole life for years doesn't get their full circle moment. And
mhm,
that felt terrible for me. Where I was like, that would never happen to me in running. Like if worst comes to worst, in track, if I do enough winning, I can get to state on my own.
mhm,
Like I can be good enough to where like I can forge my own path. Like of course it's
right.
more fun as a team, but if worse comes to worse, I can
Like
do
you
that.
have that opportunity, right?
Whereas some of these people, like that was it for marching band for them. It was their passion for years and years, and then we lose the competition, and they were like, "Man, that stinks."
Yeah,
And so I
yeah,
didn't want to see myself in that position as a senior either, because I knew how much I loved band, and I knew that could be me at some
mhm,
point. I just didn't. I don't know. I was worried about that happening to me.
yeah. But that was good that you was able to recognize that you had options to choose from, that it wasn't
Mhm.
just band or nothing. It was like, okay, well, this was a great, I had the opportunity to do it. I can tell the story that I did it, we made it this far, but I also have an option to run, and keep accomplishing the things I've accomplished and go further and see where it takes me. And here you are now. So
And of course,
that's good that
and in
you had
band too,
that
I wasn't just the man. Like no one really knew about running, so it was
recognition.
like people would just call me out for ways I was bad at the trumpet, and I think my ego needed that. Like,
Yeah.
like someone could be like, "You're bad
Yeah.
at it," and I'd be like, "You're right." Like I can't combat.
Like, I guess.
I get
Wow.
distracted.
That's funny. Wow, that's so interesting though. So do you play in your free time at all, or was that kind of just it after you made that decision to stick with running?
Yeah, so I continued to play all through high school. I'm less frequent on it now because it's not really conducive to the dorm life to have a trumpet. But but I
That's
can still recall some of those songs for sure, and rap
wow.
a bit on the trumpet. So yeah, but less so now. Yeah.
That's fair. Do you enjoy Troy University overall? Do you think that you've made the right decision going down there?
Yeah, I mean it's always hard to know because it's your first few months, and college is never exactly what you expect it to be. Like there's
Right.
always like little bits of college life where it's like that's new, that's different, that's not what I was
Mhm.
expecting. This thing's more difficult, whatever it is. But I think in those ways, Troy is not unique. The things that I have learned at Troy that haven't been particularly pleasant, I think were just bound to hit me.
Mhm.
Um, I love that we have a young team that is inspired to get better. I love that my coach believes in me and he wants to give me a chance to get really good at the mile. He thinks I can go very far in conference with the 1500-meter race. And so just knowing that and knowing that I have that belief is important. I believe in the training that I do. And the strength and conditioning work that I do, I've gotten a lot stronger since I've been at Troy. A lot of my professors have been great, and a lot of the people have been very kind
Yeah.
throughout my time at Troy. So yeah, I am happy with where I am, and I'm happy for that younger version of myself that was maybe wishing someday that I could be a Division 1 athlete, but just didn't know how that could happen. To be like, hey,
Mm.
we did do it.
Yep, we're
To
here.
myself, I try to be glad for the opportunities that I have because there's a part of me that would just be so thrilled that I have
Yeah.
the opportunity. So do it for him.
Yeah, I love that perspective because it's very true that, again, kind of going back to there's point in times where we wish or was hoping that we'd make it this far, and here we
Hmm.
are wishing for something else bigger. So it's just taking those opportunities to kind of reflect and appreciate where we are now and just like
Absolutely.
look at the blessing in it. So
Hmm.
that's a good perspective to have, especially as a freshman. I don't think I was thinking that as a freshman. So that's really good. Um, my last question for you,
Okay.
and I ask all the athletes this.
Hmm.
So, if you can take one piece of advice that you've learned throughout your journey and give it to someone else who's going through something similar, what would that be?
Uh, I think okay. So never trust that your career will be linear. Because there was definitely many points in my career where I've mapped out exactly how I wanted things to go. And it'd be like week by week, race by race. I'd make goals for myself. But it never ends up happening like that. Like little things get in the way, this thing goes right, this thing goes wrong, and things end up happening not how you expected.
Mm,
So keep that keep that faith in Christ. Keep understanding that not everything that happens is fully just up to you. Not all of it's your fault, and not all of it's bad. Like sometimes, like I wouldn't do what I want to do, and I just like that is just failure. Like I would be like that. Like I have failed to do what I needed to do, and I'm not going to have another chance.
right.
My senior year, like I had all these big goals for myself. I didn't accomplish them in cross country. And then I get to track and I'm going through the first couple months. I'm like, this is more of the same.
Mm,
I felt like I had been, a faithful servant. And I was like, I don't understand how these things now aren't going right. I was like, is this not the plan for me?
right.
But then we got to a point where it was like mid March and they just started coming. Where like a 10-second PR when you already score at state in the mile doesn't happen. And that was a huge blessing for me. And it was a sub 420 run, which is already like that's a good threshold for the high school mile, where
Mm,
that's to the point where you can win a lot of high school classifications with that time. And so I was like all this progress, like I felt like it was going to take me all year,
mm,
where it's like we're going to PR at this meet by a little bit, and then this one, and then we're going to end up at the 419. Because I knew very early on I wanted to break 420. But instead, what
right.
happened was I just ran far from it over and over again, but I learned something every time.
Mm,
And then midway through March, like I had it, and I ran that 419. It was a full 10-second PR. And then I was like, okay, now I know what we're doing. And I had that level of confidence. And then the 2 mile came, and I ran so much faster than that. And the 800 came. And now all of a sudden, I was one of the higher ranked 800 runners in the state as well. And so it's kind of like, don't always trust that things go linearly because they don't. Like, there's
mm,
up and downs of your career. But if every day was a 5 out of 10, it would be so much less interesting if you had some twos and some nines
right.
because that's ultimately what makes life life. Is
Yeah.
when you're able to do that and you're able to keep rolling with the punches and you're able to stay faithful and you're able to understand that that's how life goes and you're going to be all the better for it in the future if you just keep trusting that and keep
Yeah.
knowing that the plan for you never went away. It's just not exactly how you envisioned it.
Right. Wow.
Um,
It's kind of like that concept of some things are not happening to you, but happening for you.
that's
You
exactly
know, there's
right.
always a lesson in it.
You don't have to be a victim in every circumstance.
Yeah.
Some things, that's how it needed to go.
Mm,
And they put us in situations where we're like, now what? But then impossible things can happen. Good stories can still happen. The best stories that you know about happen when it looked like the hero was about to give up. That's in just about every,
Exactly.
that is such a cliche in every movie, and yet we get to a point in
You
our
watch them.
where we can get faced with something like that, and we know people have persevered, and we know it's possible, and for
Yeah.
some reason I feel like I can't, but I can.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I
Exactly.
think that that's important, is don't get discouraged when it's not linear, because it never will be. It's just
Mhm.
get back up, keep punching, stay faithful, and things
Right.
can give.
Wow. Thank you so much, Patterson. Those were some really great nuggets of advice. Like, this was a very, very great story. Great knowledge that he's able to bestow upon us. So thank you so much for getting up early and speaking with me
I'm
this
happy.
morning.
It was great.
I was happy to interview. I was really excited when Chloe gave me your information. So shout out to her
Once
again,
again,
and thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media?
right, so I have a Instagram at a Patterson Graham. If you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing, and then also the Troy XCTF Instagram page will consistently be posting us and some other members of my team that are also great. And so if you're ever interested in what we're doing, those are great ways to find me.
Nice. Thank you so much again. I really appreciate
No,
it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.